Sure. So I read about your platform, so thank you so much for inviting me to that table. But what I do, I own a couple of businesses. And the first business is Ebony and Ivory Professional Services, where I help others start their businesses, particularly small businesses or people who are trying to climb the corporate ladder. They don't necessarily want to be an entrepreneur, but they do desire to rank in their businesses or the companies that they work for. So that's anything from resume writing to interview techniques, different things like that, how to capitalize in the workplace. And then I turned that into a podcast, and it's a very successful podcast. In fact, it's currently on 20 channels to include YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Tidal, those channels, and it's called Get Noticed. So it's called Get Noticed. So the tagline from Ebony and Ivory is "Let us help you get noticed," and that whole point of saying that is to help you get in the places of the people and the faces that you desire to be, or get you to the platform that you desire to have, etc. So in addition to that, I had a lot of people asking me how did I balance owning a business and working so hard in the marketplace while being a mom, being a wife, going through different losses and gains. And so that's where the resilient aspect came in, because I wanted women to see that it's possible. Being resilient means that you are able to withstand any barrier, any obstacle, anything that is thrown at you. And so, because it was so hard for women, not just particularly women of color, but women in general, to get invited to these tables and to, to be noticed, to be seen, it was so difficult that I wanted to create a platform to show them that we're not in this by ourselves. So the goal of that is we win together. And it was showing the narrative of how women are now leading, how women are fire chiefs, how women are police chiefs, things that was mostly male dominated. It focuses on that of the woman and their resiliency, the losses that they've had to take, the no's that they received until they got to the one yes. And it spin off, it actually did very well. And I decided to make a magazine, and that magazine mostly focuses on women of color because we don't really see a lot of us in a certain light. So I wanted to capture something that showed the youngest, even a 2 year old, that hey, I could be a fire chief if I wanted to, because that's not necessarily something that is told to most women of color. You can either be an athlete or you can work for someone who has the desire and the goals that you have. So it just wanted to show a different aspect and a different picture of what life looked like from a woman's point of view.
You mentioned the first business where you help small and medium businesses. What exactly your customer segment?
So customer segment are really startups. I have a lot of startup small businesses, and they come to me for capital advice, or they may come to me for the branding aspect of it, and that's to include business cards, step and repeats, retractable banners, sort of like the Vista print of small businesses, just to help them catapult and get started and do it the right way. I do a lot of LLC paperwork. I do a lot of 501c3 grant writing, anything pertaining to catapulting the small business from an idea in your head to actually seeing it take action. That's pretty much what I do for that
Mm-hmm.
business.
And, and what kind of startups do you usually work with? Are those like local startups, or is it something related to tech and innovation? What kind of startups do you usually work with?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So I work with SCORE in helping people understand that credit is important for asking for capital for your businesses. I've also had the privilege of working with Therese in Google Startup Grind just to get people innovated enough to think I can do this. The tech side of it, of course, I seek feedback for that too. And using Microsoft, she has a lot of workshops and webinars that I attended at the Microsoft store in Jacksonville just to learn about Teams, and this was what made this so perfect because I was like, oh, I just learned this, I just downloaded this. So different technical, innovative ideas like that are pretty much what I use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. This is very interesting. I really liked the idea of I think, and I really it really resonated when Therese told me that you just don't see a lot of women of color on the covers of magazines, and when you do,
Right.
it's usually paid, usually the top 1%. And as you mentioned, not only women of color, but just women founders. There's just not enough
Right.
representation. When you hear about them, they either like don't have families, or when they do, they never talk about it. Or even if they do, it's like a very interesting play. Right now, we're talking to a couple of South African ambassadors, and the kind of issues that they're dealing with is usually the code switching that happens in your own team when you're like supportive and soft, and when you're at the big table, you're just super harsh, and people
Mm-hmm.
like can't seem to win at all because if you're supportive and you they see you as soft and like
Right.
without having without being stern, and when you're too bold, they just see you as a bossy, right?
Right.
Or that.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. I'm gonna go and introduce myself. This is really cool what you're doing. Yeah, I'm super excited just to talk to you.
Thank you.
So my name is Yola. I have a background in computer science and applied maths. I did engineering for a while, mostly in tech, like hardware and software. 2015, I had my first startup that I was like 16 or 17 at the time. We had a posture correction wearable device, and that kind of really showed me the entrepreneurship and startup world because we were backed up by Microsoft in Seattle. And that was like a big introduction to the world and really opened my eyes. With the same startup, we went to an acceleration program in Netherlands. Have you ever heard of acceleration programs before?
I've heard Therese speak to it, but not in full detail.
Yeah, basically, acceleration or sometimes pre acceleration programs is when a company funded by VCs or usually corporate investors as well, they take on 5 to 10 teams, even sometimes more, sometimes less, and they work with them on their business for 3, 4 months. So we already had an MVP, a minimal viable product at the time, and they kind of like have workshops with us, have amazing mentors. So we would have work on their business model and their financials, really help us to get to a funding stage. And then at the end of the program, you have a demo day when you pitch to investors, and then they invest in you or they start a conversation with you. So
Right.
this is basically a very intense program to build your business, to build your customer base, your partner base, and it really just like accelerates a business, right? So that's the idea. And the pre-acceleration program is when you have an idea, you don't have a minimal product yet, so they help you start building your business more than
Awesome.
accelerating what you already have. So I worked. My first acceleration kind of experience was in Netherlands when I had my own startup there, and afterwards I moved to the UK to study, and I was working with large and medium-sized companies here, and I started working on um, acceleration programs from back home. So I'm originally from Azerbaijan, and with my partners now in Scaling, we were working on pre-acceleration and acceleration programs from back home. So we were mentoring startups on a weekly basis, really working with them on their product timelines, their digital strategy, marketing, and financing, most importantly. And a couple of months ago, maybe now like 4 months ago, my partners from Azerbaijan, they decided to start Scaling, basically an online acceleration program because of COVID and everything. They just thought
Right.
that it was a good time for us to shift to an online program. They invited me as a CEO, so we've been working for the past 3, 4 months together. We initially wanted to have an equality program from the very beginning. I feel very strongly about women in STEM and women in tech, and there's definitely a lot of challenges that I have personally faced because of my gender. It's such a
Mm-hmm.
male-dominated industry, and so we wanted to start it. But once we saw the events in the U.S., particularly happening in the past several weeks, that we kind of decided that we can't wait, and we would rather start now. And basically, the program focuses on founders from underrepresented communities, and we have a 4 month program where we take teams with either minimum viable product, so something that is already like a prototype, a little bit of traction, to show that the product is wanted by customers. And we work with them for 4 months and give them funding as well to really accelerate their business. And in the end, they get access to the network of VCs and mentors that we have. So basically, when we talk about scaling, we usually have like three building blocks. We have the community. It's a white label platform that we use. Basically, startup enthusiasts, entrepreneurs that we have in our network are all there. We provide free content. We have workshops on there. We host interviews, basically to create a two-way communication with the people that we have in our network.
Right.
Second building block is our partners. We the equality program is the only program that we're doing on our own as Scaling. The rest of our programs we usually do in partnership with a bigger business. So, for example, we have an agriculture program that we are designing with one of the biggest agriculture companies in Azerbaijan. And instead of they want to invest into new innovation to bring it to their own companies. So we're doing the training and then making sure that by the end they're invested by these exact companies. So it's like a win-win situation for everyone. Mm-hmm. And then the third building block of Scaling is our really a good network of investors and VC that we have accumulated over the years. Me personally in the UK, and guys are in Balkan countries, Azerbaijan and Turkey, these kind of places. So that's a lot.
No, it's okay.
For the equality program, we have been working on the program itself, on how we're going to go with the mentors, the topics, and everything. But we also understood that we don't really understand the problems that underrepresented communities are facing. Mm-hmm. And the more we talked to people, the more we understood that people from Africa are facing completely different issues to people in the US. And for us to be within these countries, we need to understand what kind of things we need to include into our program in order to be effective, basically. And more than anything, if we couldn't find information online, any podcasts, any resources that are all encompassing about this kind of information that we need, we decided to make our journey public. So we're talking to ambassadors from all over the world. Mainly the countries that we focus on are the US, the UK, a couple of countries in Europe and Africa. And we're interviewing them. The ambassadors are successful entrepreneurs or community leaders that understand the challenges within their local communities. And most importantly, they have been able to do something good in their own communities, and in their personal journeys, they also have faced challenges and they have overcome them, right? So we're trying to understand how they have overcome them. I think more than anything, this is about representation. And if we have, so we're planning to have